This is the Texan Counselor, and today I thought I'd make my first video about a core concept that I use in counseling. It doesn't really, well, sometimes it helps me directly one-on-one with the client, but usually it's more of a sort of a background philosophy, and I think sometimes it does help my clients to sort of hear an explanation of why they're doing what they're doing, or why they're thinking the way they're thinking, or why they're feeling what they're feeling. And this is the notion of evolutionary psychology. Now, you're probably familiar with psychology, and you're probably familiar with evolution, but you may have not heard those two terms combined. And the idea of evolutionary psychology comes from using the idea of evolution, the concept of natural selection. That basically, with natural selection, the idea is that many of the characteristics that organisms have are there because they either currently help the organism survive or have helped the organism survive in the past. And by survival, this is meant to help them reproduce. The idea is the more likely they are to survive, the more likely they are to reproduce. Those characteristics get passed on to their children. Some of those children will have those characteristics at varying levels, and those that meet those characteristics even more so will become more and more able to survive, and thereon pass on their genes, and so on and so on and so on. We see this very easily in there's an insect in Texas. We call it a stick bug, and I think it's actually pretty common around the world. And I'll put up a picture here. It is basically a bug that looks like a stick, and it looks very much like a stick, and even acts like a stick. And that's going to be important in a moment here. That this bug looks like a stick, has the same long shape, same coloration. And the theory is that in the ancient past, who knows how far back it goes, some bugs looked kind of stick-like. And those that looked more stick-like tended to survive and reproduce. And their offsprings, which also tended to look more stick-like, stuck around and produced, and often, and so on and so on. And eventually you get a bug that looks like a stick. So much so that you've probably walked right past them and never ever seen them. But notice I also said they act like a stick. They tend to sit very still. Some leaf bugs will tend to kind of sway in the wind. They have behaviors as well. These behaviors do the same thing. They help them survive. You remain hidden. You tend to chase things. The reason why dogs like to chase balls is because that is how they hunt. That behavior of chasing things is a survival mechanism. So behaviors can also be a survival trait. Same thing with humans. So we go back to applying that humans are basically animals to a certain degree. I think humans are more than just animals, but we are animals, and therefore we have animal needs, and those animal needs have to be met. And so we have characteristics that help us meet those needs. And the idea with evolutionary psychology is that we can explain a lot of modern human behavior based upon this need to survival. See, a little known fact is that modern humans, as we exist today, as we in this current form, have been around for like about 100,000 years or so. And we haven't changed much. The human brain has not changed much in about 100,000 years or so. If we can go back just 50,000 years, and we could find a person and bring them back to modern day, what we would see is someone who's probably a little shorter, a little skinnier, probably dirtier, but they're basically us. And we could relate to them, and they could relate to us. And I think even they could probably operate some modern technology. Now, webcams and the internet and a car is probably beyond their ability. But a lot of other, modern technology that we take for granted would be within their realms of reason. And so what we get at is what, in a survival situation, what helped humans. One of them that comes up quite a bit is this need to belong. Humans are social creatures. We survive better in a community than we do individually. An individual human is very weak, and even a group of humans is fairly weak until we started getting tools, which is another behavior, to develop tools. But this notion of wanting to fit in and wanting to belong can get hijacked. And then we start making decisions that maybe really aren't as healthy for us, but if we were in a survival situation, they would have been. For instance, the notion of emotional contagion. Aiden Paladin did a really good long video on emotional contagion and how it operates and things. This notion of if you watch a sitcom, classic sitcom, they'll have a laugh track. And we tend to laugh when the thing laughs because our brains have evolved to want to match the energy, the behavior, the emotions of the people around us. And so if I'm watching The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon makes a joke, the laugh track starts, I tend to laugh. Because something, even though there's no real people in the room around me, something tells me I should be engaged in this, I should be laughing as well. Some people have taken these shows and removed all the laugh tracks. And when you watch them, they're kind of creepy. They're at least very awkward. They're kind of weird. There's nothing funny about them. And that's when you realize real fast how unfunny most TV shows are. If it wasn't for the laugh track, it wouldn't work. They do this similar with late night comedy shows where even though they have a live audience, they will have a warm-up actor. A couple of warm-up stand-up comedians come out, keep the show laughing, keep people in a good mood. They hype up the whole show. So by the time the Jimmy Kimmel or the Stephen Colbert comes out, the audience is already ready to laugh. They've kind of, as a group, as an audience, have decided we're all okay together. This is all a new experience, and we're all here to go have a good time. And then Stephen Colbert comes out and makes some jokes, and even if they're not funny, people are going to laugh. And if they don't laugh, there's a guy sitting in the booth with a little laugh track thing. That hasn't gone away. It's just gotten a little more sophisticated than it did like in the 1950s, 1960s or so. But that emotional contagion can be really hijacked when we talk about fear, because that's another important aspect of psychological, evolutionary psychology. I'm going to talk a whole lot about fear, because that is a big driver, because the human brain responds to fear more strongly than any other emotion, and we need to, because that's what keeps us alive. The cavemen who sat in their cave and looked at their food stores and said, I don't know, that might be good enough food, and then didn't act on it. They starved to death, they didn't produce children, and they're not our ancestors. Our ancestors sat in the cave, looked at all the food, and go, I don't know if that's enough. Winter was pretty cold last year. I'm going to get more food, just in case. And those are the ones who survived. They acted on their fear. And it's a rational fear in this case because we're talking about survival stuff. Modern day advertising plays on this fear all the time. Most of our advertising is about deficits. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not a good enough mother. And oh, by the way, we have a perfect thing that's going to fix it all for you. Buy this stuff, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. They like a common one. They do it to mothers all the time. Do you know how many germs are in your home, in your kitchen? They could make your family sick. They have like a whole thing that shows like, computerized germs growing around on someone's counter or something. Well, no one wants a sick family. Well, do you not love your children? Is that what it is? Oh, but if you get new and improved Lysol or whatever it is, that'll fix everything. And so then people run out and buy the thing because that's what you got to do. Fear and anger, I'll talk more about anger in another time, but fear and anger are motivating emotions. They drive us to do something. We feel like we have to act on them. We don't ignore them. Sadness, we can sit with sadness. We can even sit with happiness because we can just enjoy it. But fear, we feel like we should be going out and doing something. Again, we evolved from the cavemen who went out and got more food to survive the winter. And so what modern day advertisers like to do is they like to hijack our fear and tell us that something is going wrong, something bad is going to happen, and we need a fix. And oh, and by the way, if you go buy our thing, that's going to fix it. And that's how they hijack your fear. Politicians do this all the time. We saw this in the 2016 elections. Lots of people have talked about this. The main motivating factor for a lot of people voting for Hillary Clinton was they didn't want Donald Trump to win. Mainly because they're afraid that he was Hitler, he was a Nazi, he was going to round up gay people, he was going to deport everybody, whatever. but they were convinced that horrible, horrible things would happen if Donald Trump had been elected. And lo and behold, the DNC had a ready answer in the form of Hillary Clinton. Go vote for Hillary, and you can avoid the fear. So these concepts are going to come up quite a bit in my talks. And there's a lot of other things with evolutionary psychology I'm just not even touched on. But I could probably do a whole series of videos, and I probably will talk a lot more about it. But I think the big takeaway message is that the reason why you do a lot of the things that you do, and the way you think, the way you feel, the way you think that you think, and the way you feel that you feel, is because at least at some point, whether it was in your life or maybe your ancestors' life, that thought, that behavior, that feeling had a survival mechanism. For some people, they grew up in horrible environments, and they were just trying to survive, and then that's why they started acting the way that they did or feeling the way they did. And sometimes it's just a species-wide thing, typically like the fear of germs, the fear of the unknown, these sort of things. This is what all humans actually feel. But anyway, I think that's about it for tonight. Again, if you like the video, please like it, please share it, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.